There are more things, Lucilius, likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Fear does not need to destroy your life in one dramatic moment. It only needs to become the voice you consult before every decision. It asks whether you are completely ready. It demands one more guarantee. It shows you everything that could go wrong, then calls your hesitation wisdom. And if you obey it often enough, you can spend years standing beside the life you wanted, explaining to yourself why the moment was never quite right. The most dangerous fear rarely feels like panic. It feels like preparation. It feels like being responsible, realistic, careful, mature. You revise the plan again. You wait for your confidence to improve. You tell yourself that you will act when the confusion clears. But the confusion does not clear, because clarity is often waiting on the other side of the action you keep postponing. Fear has made an impossible bargain with you. First feel certain, then begin. The truth is that most meaningful beginnings arrive before certainty. This is how a capable person becomes governed without noticing. No one has to lock the door. Fear only has to persuade you that staying inside was your own carefully reasoned choice. If you want to understand the hidden forces that shape behavior and learn how to reclaim authority over your own life, subscribe. This is not about becoming fearless. It is about becoming someone whose fear no longer gets the final vote. Imagine a woman who has wanted to leave a job for 3 years. She is not impulsive. She has savings. She has skills that other employers value. She has even written the resignation email several times. Yet every Sunday night, she opens another article about the economy, another salary comparison, another discussion about the risks of changing careers. The information gives her a brief sense of movement. She feels as though she is solving the problem. But Monday arrives, and she walks back into the same office with the same heaviness in her chest. Her fear does not say, "Stay unhappy forever." That would be too obvious. It says, "Just wait until the market is safer. Wait until your portfolio is stronger. Wait until you know exactly what the next 5 years will look like." These requests sound sensible in isolation. Together, they create a standard no real life can meet. The future cannot provide a written guarantee. So she remains loyal to a situation she has already outgrown, not because it is good, but because it is known. That distinction matters. Human beings often confuse familiarity with safety. What is familiar may be painful, limiting, or humiliating, but because you understand its rules, your nervous system knows how to survive it. The unfamiliar contains possibilities you cannot rehearse. It might lead to freedom, but it might also expose you to rejection, failure, or regret. Fear prefers a predictable wound to an unpredictable future. It would rather manage a pain it recognizes than risk meeting a life it cannot control. This is why intelligent people can remain stuck for so long. Intelligence gives fear better arguments. A thoughtful mind can produce 10 reasons to wait where a simpler mind produces 1. It can imagine distant consequences, study every variable, and construct convincing stories about disaster. The ability to think ahead is valuable, but when fear takes command of that ability, foresight becomes a prison. You are no longer using thought to prepare for action. You are using thought to protect yourself from action. Consider a man who wants to tell someone how he feels. He notices warmth between them. There are conversations that last longer than necessary, moments of unmistakable attention, a sense that something real may be forming. But before he speaks, he tries to eliminate every possibility of rejection. He studies each message. He wonders whether a delayed reply means disinterest. He asks friends to interpret a sentence that probably had no hidden meaning. He tells himself he is waiting for a clearer signal. What he actually wants is not clarity. He wants immunity. He wants to make himself vulnerable without being vulnerable. He wants the answer before he asks the question. Fear promises that enough analysis can create this immunity, but it cannot. Human relationships do not offer certainty in advance. At some point, sincerity requires risk. If he waits until rejection is impossible, he may also wait until connection is impossible. Someone else moves forward, the moment closes, and he calls the outcome bad timing. Fear often hides inside language that protects your self-image. You do not say, "I am afraid to choose." You say, "I am keeping my options open." You do not say, "I am afraid to be judged." You say, "I have high standards." You do not say, "I am afraid my work will reveal my current limits." You say, "It is not ready yet." The description changes, but the result remains the same. You preserve the fantasy of your potential by refusing to test it against reality. Potential is comforting because it cannot be measured. As long as the book is unwritten, it might be brilliant. As long as the business is unstarted, it might succeed magnificently. As long as you never apply, you can believe you were qualified. Action turns possibility into evidence, and evidence may be disappointing. This is why fear can make inaction feel protective. It allows you to keep an ideal version of yourself untouched by failure, but the protection has a price. The ideal self stays pure while the real self grows weaker. Each promise you make and quietly abandon teaches your mind that your decisions are negotiable. Each time you say tomorrow and do nothing tomorrow, you lose a small amount of trust in your own word. Eventually, the problem is no longer the unfinished project or the unmade decision. The problem is that you no longer believe yourself when you say you are going to change. Self-trust is not built by repeating affirmations about confidence. It is built through evidence. You decide to take one difficult step, and then you take it. You make a promise small enough to keep, and then you keep it. You discover that discomfort can be carried without becoming catastrophe. Confidence follows these experiences. It is the memory of having met uncertainty before and remained standing. Think about the first day at a new workplace. Before you arrive, your mind may produce scenes of embarrassment. You imagine forgetting names, misunderstanding instructions, sitting alone at lunch, or being exposed as less capable than people believed. Fear presents these scenes with the emotional force of memories, even though none of them has happened. Then the day comes. You ask a few questions. You make one minor mistake. Someone shows you where the coffee is. By the end of the week, what felt like a cliff has become a hallway you walk without thinking. The hallway did not become safe because you solved it in your imagination. It became familiar because you entered it. This is one of the central laws of courage. The mind cannot think its way into every form of safety. Some safety can only be learnt through contact. You have to enter the room, have the conversation, send the work, make the decision, and allow your nervous system to update its predictions. Fear hates this kind of learning because reality limits its imagination. Before you act, fear can invent an infinite number of disasters. After you act, it has to contend with what actually happened. Perhaps the conversation was awkward, but survivable. Perhaps the application was rejected, but another person answered. Perhaps the first attempt was poor, but it showed you exactly what to improve. Reality may bruise you, but it also gives the problem boundaries. Fear without action has no boundaries at all. This does not mean every fear is irrational. Some situations are dangerous. Some people are untrustworthy. Some decisions can produce serious consequences. Courage is not the refusal to assess risk. It is the refusal to treat every possibility as a command. A smoke alarm is useful because it alerts you. It becomes destructive when it controls the house long after you have checked the room and found no fire. Your fear is allowed to provide information. It is not entitled to make the decision. You can ask what it is trying to protect, examine the evidence, reduce unnecessary risk, and still move. This is mature courage. It is neither recklessness nor paralysis. It is informed action without the fantasy of complete control. Suppose your family has always expected you to be the stable one. You are the person who answers every call, calms every argument, and rearranges your plans when someone else creates a crisis. You begin to imagine a different life, perhaps in another city, perhaps with firmer boundaries, perhaps with more of your energy reserved for work you care about. Immediately, fear speaks in the voices of the people who depend on your compliance. What if they call you selfish? What if your mother becomes distressed? What if your brother says you have changed? What if the family tells the story as though you abandoned them? These fears are not imaginary in the sense that no one will react. They may react exactly as you expect. But fear makes a second move. It treats their discomfort as proof that your choice is wrong. This is how social fear becomes command. It does not merely warn you that people may disapprove. It tells you that you are morally required to prevent their disapproval. It converts someone else's emotional reaction into your responsibility. If you accept that rule, anyone who becomes upset enough can overrule your life. The person who benefits from your fear does not always need a secret plan. Families, workplaces, and relationships naturally form patterns. When you always surrender first, other people adjust around your surrender. When you always explain your boundary until everyone agrees, They learn that agreement is required before your boundary counts. When you rescue every crisis, they stop developing the muscles your rescue replaces. Your fear of conflict becomes part of the structure that keeps the pattern alive. Then the day you change, the system pushes back. A manager who praised your dedication becomes cold when you stop answering messages at midnight. A friend who called you generous accuses you of becoming distant when you are no longer available on demand. A partner who liked your easygoing nature becomes irritated when you express a preference. Fear points to this reaction and says, "See, change is dangerous." But resistance is not always evidence that you made the wrong choice. Sometimes it is evidence that the old arrangement was working for someone other than you. When a door has always opened without a lock, the first person asked to knock may experience the lock as aggression. That does not make the door cruel. It means access has changed. To become someone fear can no longer command, you must learn to survive being misunderstood. Not everyone will receive your growth as good news. Some people only know how to relate to the version of you who needed permission. Your hesitation gave them predictability. Your self-doubt made you easier to influence. When you begin choosing without presenting a courtroom defense, they may call your clarity arrogance. This is one of the hardest tests of self-command. Can you let another person hold an inaccurate opinion of you without rushing to erase it? Can you disappoint someone without treating their disappointment as an emergency? Can you allow the conversation to end before you have been declared innocent? Imagine an employee who asks for a raise. She has documented her results. She knows the market rate. She chooses a calm moment and makes a clear request. Her manager does not immediately agree. Instead, he questions her loyalty. He reminds her that the team is like a family. He lists times the company supported her. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about compensation. It is about whether she is a good person. Fear tempts her to retreat from the request and repair her image. She begins explaining that she is grateful, that she loves the team, that she would never want to seem demanding. The more she explains, the further the discussion moves from the evidence she brought. Her fear of being seen as disloyal has become leverage. She may leave the room with no raise and a strange sense of relief because the manager is no longer disappointed in her. That relief is the immediate reward that keeps fear in power. Obedience often produces short-term peace. You cancel the difficult conversation and your body relaxes. You postpone the application and the threat of rejection disappears for the evening. You agree to the request and the other person smiles again. Fear appears to have protected you. But short-term relief is not the same as long-term safety. Every retreat strengthens the association between avoidance and rescue. Your nervous system learns that the way to end discomfort is to surrender the decision. The next time, fear arrives earlier and speaks louder. What you repeatedly escape becomes more frightening. What you repeatedly face becomes more manageable. This is why waiting to feel fearless is a trap. Avoidance does not prepare you for courage. It trains you for more avoidance. The feeling you want is often produced by the behavior you are postponing. You do not become ready and then speak. You speak, recover from the trembling, and become more ready for the next conversation. You do not become confident and then show your work. You show imperfect work, learn that exposure is survivable, and confidence grows around the evidence. A young artist can spend 2 years perfecting a portfolio that no one sees. Each week, she adjusts colors, replaces pieces, studies the work of people far ahead of her, and decides she needs another month. She says quality matters, and it does, but quality is no longer the only goal. The hidden goal is avoiding the moment when the work can be judged. One day she submits 3 pieces to a small exhibition. 2 are rejected, 1 is accepted. Fear predicted that rejection would expose her as an imposter. Reality gives her something more useful. 1 curator's interest, 2 decisions that do not define her, and a deadline that forces her to finish. Her skill improves faster in the next 3 months than it did during the previous year of private perfection. Not because rejection felt good, but because her work finally entered a world that could answer back. Action gives you feedback. Fear gives you prophecy. Feedback is specific. It says this skill needs work, this person is not interested, this plan needs more money, this boundary needs a consequence. Prophecy is total. It says you will fail, everyone will leave, you will regret it forever. You are not the kind of person who can do this. One helps you adjust. The other asks you to surrender. When fear speaks in absolutes, answer with specifics. Do not ask, what if everything goes wrong? Ask, what are the 3 most likely problems? Do not ask, what if I cannot handle it? Ask, what resource would I need if this particular difficulty occurred? Do not ask, what if they reject me? Ask, what will I do the day after a rejection? Specific questions turn fog into terrain. Once you can see the terrain, you can prepare for it. You may discover that the risk is too high, and choosing not to act can then be an act of judgment rather than obedience. But often you will discover that the danger is finite. There is a loss you could survive, an embarrassment that would pass, a conversation you could leave, a plan you could revise. Fear is strongest when the consequence remains unnamed. A person says, I cannot leave this relationship because I do not know what will happen. When asked what they fear, the answer may be loneliness, financial disruption, family criticism, or the possibility of wanting to return. Each concern deserves respect. None should be minimized, but unnamed together, they become an enormous shadow. Named separately, they become problems that can be planned for. Perhaps the person builds an emergency fund. Perhaps they speak with someone trustworthy. Perhaps they learn what housing is available. Perhaps they stop announcing boundaries to a partner who uses every announcement as an opportunity to pressure them. Courage is not always a dramatic exit. Sometimes courage is the quiet construction of options. This matters because motivational language can become another form of dishonesty. Telling someone to just take the leap ignores the difference between emotional discomfort and material danger. If children, money, health, retaliation, or dependence are involved, preparation is not cowardice. The question is whether preparation is creating a path toward action or becoming a ritual that postpones action forever. Real preparation has an end condition. It defines what enough looks like. I will save this amount. I will gather these documents. I will speak to these 2 people. I will decide by this date. Fear-based preparation keeps moving the finish line. Once you save the money, it demands more. Once you gather information, it invents a new uncertainty. Once the date approaches, it argues that this month is unusually complicated. Give preparation a boundary. Decide what information is essential, what risk can be reduced, and what uncertainty must simply be carried. Then set a moment when thinking ends and choosing begins. A decision without a time boundary can become a room fear furnishes and lives in forever. You may believe that a wrong decision will destroy your trust in yourself. Often the opposite is true. Self-trust does not come from always choosing correctly. No one can do that. It comes from knowing that if a choice goes badly, you will not abandon yourself. You will respond, adjust, grieve if necessary, and choose again. Picture 2 friends deciding whether to start a small business. The first wants a perfect plan and interprets every unresolved question as a reason to delay. The second does not ignore risk. She calculates a limited budget, tests the idea on a small scale, and defines the loss she is willing to accept. Both feel fear. The difference is not emotion. The difference is authority. The second friend tells fear. You may influence the size of the first step, but you may not cancel the journey. This is a powerful model. Courage does not require you to make the largest possible move. It requires you to make a real move, one that produces evidence and cannot be confused with more private rehearsal. If you want to change careers, a real move might be sending 1 application, scheduling 1 conversation with someone in the field, or completing 1 public project. If you want stronger boundaries, a real move might be declining 1 request without inventing an excuse. If you want to create, a real move might be publishing 1 finished piece while you still see its imperfections. The size can be modest. The contact with reality cannot be imaginary. Fear will often punish the first step with increased noise. This surprises people. They expect that choosing courage will immediately create peace. Sometimes the opposite happens. Once you send the application, you may want to withdraw it. Once you state the boundary, you may feel guilty. Once you publish the work, you may check for reactions every few minutes. The fear becomes louder because it has lost automatic control. Do not interpret that noise as a message to reverse direction. It may simply be the nervous system protesting a broken habit. A prisoner who has lived in darkness will not experience sunlight as comfortable at first. Discomfort can accompany liberation because the unfamiliar has not yet become safe. The days after a courageous act are important. Do not sit beside the decision and interrogate it without end. Do not ask whether you feel completely sure now. Return to the reasons you chose. Observe the actual consequences. Give reality time to answer. A new boundary cannot prove its value in the first hour, especially when everyone affected is still reacting to it. There is another form of fear that appears after success. You finally receive the opportunity, enter the relationship, or gain the visibility you wanted. Instead of relief, you feel exposed. Now there is something to lose. You may begin shrinking your behavior, overworking, pleasing everyone, or preparing for the moment it is taken away. This is fear trying to regain command through maintenance. It tells you that success must be protected by constant vigilance. You stop enjoying the life you built because you are guarding it against every imagined threat. The promotion becomes a daily audition. Love becomes a test you must never fail. Recognition becomes evidence you have to reproduce perfectly. The answer is not to care less. It is to stop making your safety dependent on permanent possession. You can value a relationship without controlling its future. You can respect an opportunity without pretending it can never end. You can do excellent work without demanding that every result confirm your worth. Fear weakens when you remember that losing something would hurt, but it would not erase your capacity to live. This is deeper than positive thinking. Positive thinking often tries to replace a frightening prediction with a pleasant one. It says everything will work out, but sometimes things do not work out in the form you wanted. Courage says something more durable. Whatever happens, I will meet the next reality when it arrives. I do not need a promise that nothing painful will happen. I need a relationship with myself that pain cannot cancel. A person who trusts this becomes difficult to control. Threats lose some of their force. A manipulative partner says, if you leave, no one else will want you. A controlling parent says, if you choose differently, you will regret it. A dishonest employer says, opportunities like this do not come twice. Each statement tries to turn uncertainty into a weapon. Fear makes the weapon effective when you believe the unknown is worse than any known mistreatment. The moment you accept that uncertainty can contain difficulty and possibility, the threat changes shape. You may still tremble, you may still grieve, but you can no longer be kept in place merely by someone pointing toward the fog. People who rely on your fear may escalate when they sense this change. They may demand an immediate answer because urgency prevents reflection. They may predict disaster because catastrophe narrows your imagination. They may attack your identity because shame can make you surrender faster than logic. They may alternate warmth and withdrawal, making obedience feel like the price of connection. Recognize the sequence: pressure, prediction, identity attack, conditional relief. You do not have to prove that every person using it is consciously manipulative. You only need to see what the pattern does to your freedom. If a conversation makes you feel that you must betray your judgment immediately to restore safety, slow it down. Say, I will think about that. Say, I am not deciding under pressure. Say, I understand that you disagree. These sentences are not dramatic, but they interrupt command. They create distance between the fear and the action fear wants from you. In that distance, ask 3 questions. What is actually happening now? What story is fear adding? What choice would I respect myself for making, even if the result remained uncertain? The first question returns you to facts. The second reveals imagination. The third restores values. Fear asks which choice guarantees comfort. Self-command asks which choice expresses the person you intend to become. Suppose a close friend repeatedly mocks your ambitions. Whenever you describe a plan, he makes a joke about your history of unfinished projects. Part of you wants to confront him, but fear predicts that the friendship will become awkward, so you laugh along. The immediate moment stays easy, but something inside you registers the betrayal. The next time it happens, you say, calmly, I do not want you speaking about my work that way. He tells you that you are too sensitive. Fear urges you to soften the boundary, smile, and reassure him, but you allow the silence to remain. You are not certain what happens next. Perhaps he apologizes. Perhaps he becomes defensive. Perhaps the friendship changes. What is certain is that you did not abandon yourself to prevent a moment of tension. That becomes evidence. The result with him matters, but the result within you matters too. You have taught your nervous system that discomfort does not automatically require surrender. This is how authority is reclaimed, not through one heroic transformation, but through repeated moments in which fear speaks and you remain the one who chooses. You notice the racing heart. You hear the catastrophic story. You reduce the risk where possible. Then you act according to judgment rather than reflex. At first, these moments may feel clumsy. Your voice may shake. You may explain more than you intended. You may take one step and then retreat half a step. Do not use imperfect courage as evidence that you are incapable of courage. A person learning to walk does not interpret imbalance as a command to remain on the floor. Measure progress differently. Did you act sooner than before? Did you tolerate 5 minutes more uncertainty? Did you tell the truth where you once performed agreement? Did you recover from a mistake without turning it into an identity? Did you keep one promise to yourself after the excitement faded? These are the signs that fear is losing rank. It may remain present, but presence is not command. Rain can be present without deciding your destination. Noise can be present without deciding your answer. Fear can sit beside you without holding the steering wheel. There will still be decisions you delay, conversations you avoid, and days when old habits return. Self-command is not a permanent emotional state. It is a practice of returning. The goal is not to become a person who never feels small. It is to become a person who notices when fear has made them small and knows how to stand again. Begin with one decision you already understand, not the most dangerous decision in your life. Choose the one you keep disguising as a mystery even though you know the next honest step. Write down what fear predicts. Separate what is possible from what is probable. Decide what preparation is genuinely necessary. Give that preparation an endpoint. Then name the smallest action that makes contact with reality. Send the message, make the appointment, decline the request. Open the document and finish one page. Ask the question whose answer you have been trying to obtain through imagination. Choose a date close enough that fear cannot turn the plan into another dream. When the moment arrives, do not wait for a different feeling. Let your hands be uncertain. Let your stomach tighten. Let the voice in your mind present its final argument. Courage is not the silence of that voice. Courage is the discovery that the voice can speak without being obeyed. Afterward, record what actually happened. Fear depends on your forgetting. It remembers every embarrassment and ignores every survival. Build a more honest archive. Remember the conversation you dreaded that became manageable once it began. Remember the rejection that hurt and then passed. Remember the boundary that cost you approval and returned your self-respect. Remember the day you moved while uncertainty was still in the room. Over time, a new identity forms. You stop asking whether you are a courageous person as though courage were a trait granted at birth. You know you are someone who can carry fear and continue. You know that confidence may arrive late, perhaps after the decision, perhaps after the first failure, perhaps after you have already crossed half the distance. This identity changes what others can demand from you. Urgency no longer forces an answer. Disapproval no longer proves guilt. Uncertainty no longer proves danger. A prediction no longer becomes destiny merely because it was spoken by someone with confidence. You listen, evaluate, and choose. The life on the other side of fear is not a life without pain. It is a life in which pain is no longer the only future you can imagine. It contains attempts that fail, people who misunderstand you, doors that remain closed, and plans that need revision. It also contains work you finally finish, rooms you finally enter, boundaries that protect your energy, and relationships that meet the real version of you. Fear offered you a smaller life in exchange for a promise of safety, but the promise was never real. Avoidance could not protect you from regret. Silence could not protect you from losing yourself. Endless preparation could not protect you from time. Obedience could not guarantee that people would stay. You do not have to defeat fear before you begin. You only have to change its position. Let it be a messenger, not a ruler. Let it describe risks, not your identity. Let it ask questions, not issue commands. You are the one who decides what matters enough to risk discomfort for. One day, you may look back at the choice that now terrifies you and realize that the greatest danger was not making the wrong move. It was allowing fear to make every move for you. The turning point was not the day fear disappeared. It was the day you heard it clearly, understood what it wanted, and chose your life anyway. If that is the person you are ready to become, write one word in the comments: courage.